The November rain was a cold, mean curtain, blurring the familiar Route 322 into a smear of gray and yellow. 14 years I'd driven that road, eyes half closed, a ritual of asphalt and static. But that night, something was different. My old truck's headlights cut through the gloom, catching a shape on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was a deer, hunched against the dark. Then it moved, and I saw a person, then a blanket. My foot slammed the brake, the truck shuddering sideways. I was out before the engine stopped rocking, the rain hitting me like a fist, and then I recognized her. My daughter, Claire, stood in the mud, soaking wet, clutching a newborn baby. She was 27, her lips the color of old ash, her hair plastered to her forehead. She was shaking, a tremor that ran through her whole body, holding that baby like he was the only solid thing left in the world. "Claire?" My voice was a raw rasp. She looked up, a sound tearing from her throat that was neither word nor cry. It was the sound of a person holding themselves together by sheer will, finally collapsing at the sight of a familiar face. "Dad!" she choked out, her voice cracking wide open. "He told me to get out!" He opened the door and he told me to get out, and I had Everett, and I didn't. Her knees buckled. I caught her, feeling the soaked fabric of her jacket, her body trembling against me like a leaf in a gale. Just before she went down completely, she pressed her lips against the baby's head. "Dad," she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it over the rain. The house was never mine to begin with. I didn't understand those words then. Not fully. Not for another 4 days. "The baby Everett," she'd said. My grandson, whom I'd never been allowed to meet, made a thin, reedy sound against her chest. It was the kind of sound that cuts straight through a man's ribs and grabs hold of something he didn't know was still there. "I've got you," I said, pulling them both into the warmth of the truck. "I've got you both. Come on." Everett was 3 weeks old. 3 weeks. His tiny face was scrunched and red, his fist waving at nothing. I didn't take them home. One look at Claire's ashen lips, one touch of Everett's cold cheek, and I turned the truck toward Hershey. The Milton S. Hershey Medical Center, big and bright and relentless, didn't care what time it was or what brought you there. I pulled into the emergency bay, getting Claire inside before anyone could tell me where to park. A nurse named Miriam Cole met us, a compact woman in her 50s with the calm, unhurried manner of someone who had seen every version of bad news. She took one look at Everett. "Let me take him," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Within 90 seconds, he was wrapped in a warmed blanket, under a heat lamp. His temperature's a little low, but his color's improving. Lungs sound strong. "You got here fast enough." She looked at me when she said that last part. I just nodded. They took Claire next. Mild exposure, elevated blood pressure, no serious injury. A doctor told me she needed warmth, rest, and food. I said I understood. I was standing in the hallway, still in my damp work jacket, still smelling like machine oil, when Donna Marsh, a social worker, approached me. "Mr. Gaines, I'm Donna Marsh. Standard procedure when we have a situation like this. Does she have somewhere safe to go tonight?" Something settled in my chest then, hard and certain, like a bolt dropping into a lock. "She's coming home with me," I said. Donna Marsh wrote something on her clipboard, nodded, and said she'd check back in 20 minutes. I walked back to the window outside Everett's observation area. He was under the warming lamp, his tiny face relaxed, his fist still raised like he was winning an argument. Miriam Cole, without looking up, said, "He's going to be just fine, Mr. Gaines. Tough little one." I pressed my hand against the cold glass. Outside, the rain still fell. The next morning, the house was quiet, but a new kind of quiet. Claire was asleep. Everett nestled in a bassinet Darlene had brought over. Darlene, my sister-in-law, had arrived with a casserole and a stern, comforting presence. She'd always been Lena's closest friend, and now, in Lena's absence, she was a rock. I found myself in Lena's old study, a room I hadn't touched since she passed. Her desk was still there, meticulously organized. And then I saw it. A small wooden box on a shelf, tucked behind a stack of old journals. It was a simple pine box, smooth from years of handling. I'd seen it countless times, but never thought to open it. Now, something compelled me. Inside, Nestled amongst yellowed letters and dried flowers was a thick manila envelope. On it, in Lena's elegant script, was written, "For Claire, upon the birth of her first child." My hands trembled as I pulled out the contents. There was a legal document, bound with a red ribbon, and a smaller envelope. The document was a trust, established by Lena 30 years ago, and the smaller envelope contained a single, folded sheet of paper. I opened the letter first. Lena's handwriting, so familiar, so missed. "My dearest Claire," it began, "if you are reading this, it means you have brought a new life into the world, and I am not there to share in your joy. I hope this brings you some comfort, and perhaps some protection." My eyes scanned the legal document. It was a trust, meticulously detailed, outlining the ownership of the house Claire and her husband Preston lived in. But the crucial detail was a clause written in red ink, tucked away on the last page. It stated that the house, while intended for Claire, was held in trust, with specific conditions. One condition, underlined twice, was that if Claire were ever to be forcibly removed from the property by her spouse, the trust would immediately revert to my control, and the spouse would forfeit all claims. Next to it, in the same red ink, was a name, Preston Thorne. My blood ran cold. Lena had known. 30 years ago, she had anticipated a scenario like this. She had built a shield, not out of fear, but out of a profound understanding of the world and the people in it. She had loved Claire enough to prepare for a future she wouldn't see. I called Constance Webb, a lawyer Lena had always recommended, first thing that morning. Constance was sharp, her voice calm and authoritative. I explained everything: the rain, Claire's words, the trust, the red ink. She listened patiently. "Mr. Gaines," she said, "this is significant, very significant. Can you bring the documents to my office?" The meeting with Constance was on the morning of the day before Thanksgiving. The air was crisp, the sky a pale gray. I left Claire with Darlene, not wanting to burden her with the details until I had a solid plan. Constance's office on Market Street had a quiet dignity. When I arrived, the door was already open. Inside, voices, low and professional, spoke of consequences. Constance stood at the head of a long table, the wooden box beside her. To her left sat a man I hadn't met. Mr. Gaines, Conrad Briggs, Harrisburg Criminal Investigations. He was in his mid-50s, with the measured stillness of a man who had spent decades in rooms where people lied. And then I saw him, Preston. He sat at the far end of the table, his face a mask of carefully constructed calm. He looked at me, a flicker of something, perhaps surprise, perhaps recognition, in his eyes. He probably thought I was there to beg, to plead for Claire's return to him. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Constance began, her voice clear and precise, laying out the terms of Lena's trust. She explained the red-inked clause, the immediate reversion of the property, the forfeiture of Preston's claims. Preston's composure began to crack. His face tightened, a vein throbbing in his temple. Then Conrad Briggs spoke, his voice low and steady. "Mr. Thorne, we also have reason to believe that some of the documents signed by your wife, related to refinancing and other financial matters, may contain forged signatures." Preston scoffed. "She signed them. She's just trying to get out of it. We're having a forensic document examiner compare them against known samples of Miss Gaines's handwriting." Briggs continued, unperturbed. "If even one is forged, Mr. Thorne, that changes the legal picture significantly. It means you didn't just manipulate her, you impersonated her. That is a different category of crime entirely." The color drained from Preston's face. He looked at me then, a desperate, cornered animal in his eyes. He had studied Claire's vulnerabilities like a surveyor studies land, but he had underestimated Lena, and he had underestimated me. I pulled out the smaller envelope from Lena's box, the one with the single folded sheet of paper. "Lena left something else," I said, my voice steady. "A note. For Preston." Constance raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. I unfolded the paper and read, Lena's words echoing in the quiet room. "Preston, I knew you would try this. I saw it in you, the way you looked at what was ours, not what was hers. This house, this life, it was built on love, not greed. You will not take it from her. You will not take it from her child." I have prepared for you, and now you will face the consequences." Preston's carefully constructed calm shattered. He lunged across the table, a guttural sound torn from his throat. Briggs and another officer were on him in an instant, restraining him. The room erupted in a controlled chaos. I sat there, watching him, feeling no triumph, only a profound sense of sorrow. Sorrow for Claire, for the years she had spent with this man, for the pain he had inflicted, and a deep, abiding gratitude for Lena, who had seen it all and had prepared. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Preston Thorne was charged, and the evidence, including the forged documents and Lena's meticulous trust, was undeniable. Constance Webb worked tirelessly, ensuring Claire's rights were protected. The house, indeed, reverted to the trust, with Claire as the sole beneficiary. Life settled into a new rhythm. Claire and Everett moved into my home. Floyd, my old friend from the warehouse, became a regular presence, developing a quiet rapport with Everett. Darlene was there Tuesdays and Wednesdays, filling the house with the scent of baking and the sound of gentle chatter. The house had a rhythm again, a rhythm born of love and resilience. I often found myself looking at Everett, his tiny face full of the complete, unguarded examination that infants give to faces. He was 3 weeks old, that rainy November night, a small figure in the storm, but he was also the catalyst. He was the reason I stopped, the reason I opened the box, the reason Lena's carefully laid plans finally came to fruition. Lena had planted an oak tree in our yard 28 years ago, insisting on digging the hole herself, because she wanted it to know it was planted with intention. That tree was 40 feet tall now, its new leaves catching the April light. Everything she had built, the trust, the envelopes, the careful notation in red ink, had been planted the same way, not in fear, not in doubt, but in the specific intention of a woman who understood that the people she loved would need ground to stand on after she was gone, and who had spent 30 years quietly preparing it. I had not been able to protect her at the end. That was still true, but I had found Claire on a wet November road and brought her home. And I had opened a box that was waiting to be opened, and I had sat in a cafe and watched a reckoning arrive that Lena had set in motion long before any of us understood what we were part of. I held the wooden box in one hand and my daughter's son in the other. Outside, the April light moved through the oak tree's new leaves and fell across the front porch in patterns that shifted and settled and shifted again. The promise had been kept. If this story stayed with you, if something in it reminded you of the people who prepared the ground beneath your own feet before you knew you would need it, then carry it with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have known a person who loved quietly and built carefully and left something behind that only made sense later, then you already understand what this story was about. I have lived 68 years, and I will tell you what I know. God does not always arrive when we call, but he arrives before the damage becomes permanent. On a November road in the rain, he arrived wearing a pair of headlights that almost did not stop. If I could speak to the man I was before all of this, I would tell him, do not mistake silence for strength. Do not mistake distance for protection. The people who need you cannot wait for you to be ready. Do not assume that loving someone is the same as protecting them. Love is the reason you build a shield. It is not the shield itself. Lena knew that. I learned it too late, and my family nearly paid the price for my assumption that silence meant safety. Here is what I believe. The people who love us quietly, who write names in red ink and seal envelopes and plant trees, they may not live to see them fully grown. Those people are the architecture of our lives. We do not always recognize it until we need it.